You ready, Nick? Let's get him. Play my song.
Just starting my day, and it's already
Shout out to the truck drivers, I'm back.
Seems like there is hours in the day.
I got a wonderful new episode
Now
for
the
y'all.
traffic is
Love this.
bumper
For those traveling across country,
this
is it, man. Straight into it, man. Appreciate you, Nick. Shout out to everybody that's been tuning in, truck drivers, people traveling internationally, man. I've been getting a lot of feedback. The last couple of weeks, I've been trying to find ways to sharpen my razor, meaning I've been taking in a lot more information, listening to a lot of different people speak, people like Warren Buffett, just the high power. And I'm trying to get my dribble right. Female friend of mine invited me to Barnes & Noble a few days ago. She said, I want to go get some books and maybe we can start, she's a part of a book club. And she kind of was like sharing with me the dribble, She suggested we go up to Barnes & Noble and grab some books, so we did that. And I got this Hurricanes by Rick Ross, who I'm going to speak about shortly. This is Most Dope about Mac Miller, all hip-hop. This one right here is a psychology book about Tanner from Baltimore. He's not a rapper. He was a wild gangster, shooter, whatever. And he was out there, way out there, to the point that people wanted to study his mind. And I was familiar with the topic, so I had to grab that book on Tanner. And Among the Bros by Max Marshall. This is a book that I'm reading with a female. She bought a copy, I bought a copy, and we reading it together. We're going to come back together and have a discussion. This book, when I chose it, she read the synopsis. She said, that's a good book. Why did you choose that? I chose this book because I had been watching a documentary on hazing and some shit that happened in Scranton, Pennsylvania. So that's what piqued my interest. In recent years, we've seen many people get killed because of hazing at universities and shit like that. So this book is called Among the Bros, a fraternity crime story. I assumed this to be about hazing and, murders and shit like that. And it is. But the gist of it was that these fraternity boys was big drug dealers. Now, let me talk about the fraternities for a minute. After reading this book is very engaging too. I got a better idea of fraternities and sororities, and I have to admit that the world is shaped and built by people in fraternities and sororities. I went to college and I didn't take them serious and shit. I didn't think much of them. I used to play basketball with a lot of frat guys. They used to be at the rec center. I was in intramural leagues with them. Cool dudes and shit. They never tried to impose, their lifestyle and shit like that on me. They were very fond of me. I was on campus with all types of butter leathers and getting fresh and shit like that. And these guys were black. They come from different walks of life, but we had, fashion in common. But after reading this book, damn, I can further understand why, and I don't know why I wasn't hip to this information, why I didn't get it. Although I had an uncle who pledged and shit and was in a fraternity. I didn't never think much of them niggas. I didn't think it was something that would make me better or anything, or help me out or anything like that. I just didn't think much of it, man. A bunch of niggas living in a house, corny niggas. This is what I thought. This is my understanding of it. I'm pretty sure every guy who's ever been in a fraternity, look at me as corny. Straight up. The fraternity guys, these motherfuckers, man, people say that the biggest gang in the world is the police and shit like that. They refer to the police as the Fraternal Order of Police. These are two terms that's used in the Greek world: fraternal, fraternity, and order. I'm reading this book about a fraternity at the College of Charleston in South Carolina and shit. And I'm Phew, it's just too much. It's too much. Then I'm just gonna try to go from the top. Fraternities. When we looked at fraternities, you know, if you hadn't been in college, your understanding of a fraternity was television. And when I was growing up in the early 80s, I watched movies like Porky's and Nerds and shit like that. And they would, you know, kind of like show the fraternities and shit like that. And it wasn't nothing about it attractive to me and shit. But they were saying in the book that fraternities used to be a bunch of square, cardigan wearing, docile, everything that you would probably see in a film, the way that they were described, until the movie Animal House came out. That's a movie with John Belushi. This is a movie about college and shit like that. And in the movie, you seen John Belushi just going buck wild and shit. Before Animal House, colleges and fraternities were one way. They were cool with doing community service, just a real book club, community service, chess club. You know, even they were even a part of religious organizations. When the movie Animal House came out, it showed wild ass John Belushi in a fraternity that he was in, and these guys was buck wild. Totally against everything that fraternities were supposed to be. This movie with John Belushi, he was like the Antichrist for fraternities and shit. You feel me? They going around dressing how they want to dress, cussing. The dean of schools, they trying to fuck his daughter. They just doing all types of wild shit. Not to mention the parties that was depicted in this movie. Animal House changed fraternities forever. After that film came out, fraternities no longer wanted to be the quiet, cardigan wearing, community service, square types that was in the 60s and the 70s and the 50s and shit like that. After Animal House, they no longer wanted that. They wanted to be a part of the noise. This is where fraternities get that wild party, tear up shit from. It came from a movie. It was influenced by a movie called Animal House. So this is what we know fraternities to be in America today. Bunch of wild guys, probably jocks in the house, drinking like a motherfucker, tearing shit up, bonfires, all of that. All of this derived from Animal House. After Animal House, nobody wanted to be the squeaky clean guys on campus anymore. Nobody wanted to be those guys. They wanted to be the wild guys who fucking all the bad bitches and who are carrying status on campus. Boom. A lot of fraternities, especially the top fraternities, the top shelf ones, it's all about money. And it's all about generational wealth. What I mean by that is, you got some fraternities who was just about nothing but money. The deciding factor on whether or not you get selected to come into the fraternity, it ain't about your grades, none of that shit. It's about your background, what type of family you come from, your last name. You feel me? They're reaching for the highest caliber Willie on campus. That's what a lot of fraternities are. We're gonna get the richest kids on campus and bring them into a club. If you ever been on college campus and you just kind of like thought about the fraternity thing, let's just separate them from everybody else. If you're on campus, nobody got more money than the frats. They don't. Because they're acting as one. They're an organization and they're pooling their funds and resources together. And for this to exist and grow, their strategy is to attain the most richest and highest caliber students they can find. And what you have is when you get a fraternity, if you get a fraternity, let's refer to the one at College of Charleston. These fraternities were built by selecting people for their financial background. There's some students, what I'm trying to say is that they have fraternities for every economic class. They got low class fraternities, they got middle class fraternities, and they got the top shelf rich motherfuckers and shit. I'm reading this book and it gave me a whole lot understanding of them. I went to college. I was around guys that was in frats. I didn't think nothing of them niggas. I didn't at all. I didn't. And from reading this book, it clearly shows how these guys are prepared as men to be giants, basically, and shit. They program these guys. They teach them etiquette. They teach them knowledge and different philosophies and shit. And a lot of the philosophies, they do come from the Greek world. And that's something that I've always spoke out against. Fuck the frats. I don't want to know nothing about being no Greek. I'm black. This and this and that. My understanding from the book is that they took the greatest Greeks, their philosophies, their mottos and shit like that, and they extracted information from them. A fraternity has been compared to a knighthood. A knighthood, when you see somebody be knighted and they put the swords on, that's similar to a fraternity, and they put them through different things, man, before they accept them into these organizations. Now, we all know about the hazing shit, and this publicly understood, announced, and promoted through a lot of these fraternities, handbooks, and websites that they're not with the hazing. They're not with the hazing, and nobody should have to go through that to become a part of these organizations. Right? Let's interject alcohol. Never understood the big thing with alcohol and fraternities and shit, right? From reading this book, I'm starting to understand the prevalence of it at these frat houses. They use alcohol for hazing because alcohol ain't gonna leave no bruises on your body. People have died from physical hazing ceremonies and shit. You're not gonna die, you're not gonna get any bruises on your body or nothing like that. You won't break any bones from alcohol. So a lot of these hazing rituals, which they try to say isn't hazing, consists of drinking. They drinking gallons of liquor. They locking these boys in closets, man, with gallons and gallons of liquor, man. 5-6 guys who trying to enter the fraternity pledges, and they having them pass this bottle around and drink this shit till it's gone and shit. This is one of the hazing rituals that's popular on campus, I guess, making people drink. They go further than that. They be having motherfuckers smoking tobacco bongs. You feel me? They'll take a pledgee who don't smoke weed or anything and put him in a closet with a tobacco bong. They will fill a bong with fucking smoking, with tobacco, cigarette tobacco, and tell them, get your ass in there and smoke that shit. You know what I'm saying? Till you damn near dead. A lot of these rituals that is in this book, it involved alcohol, and because of that, you see in the news all the time people dying from alcohol poisoning at the hands of these college organizations. I have to say that the fraternities are the biggest gangs in the United States and the most dynamic gangs at that. When we mention gangs, you kind of think of the Crips, Bloods, Gangster Disciples, GDs, Vice Lords, and all that type of shit. Those gangs and the fraternity gangs are two different things. The street gangs, they don't require a motherfucker to be intelligent. They kind of put their emphasis on violence and shit like that. They'll take anybody, and we've seen that they'll take anybody into a street gang. Hence 6ix9ine and the way non-trade gangsters took him in. That wouldn't have never happened in a fraternity. They don't just take anybody. They don't take anybody, man. You gotta have your shit together. They want to have the students with the most resources. That's who they choose to bring into the high level frats. Some of those fraternity houses that they live in, them guys just bought them houses by their parents and shit. This is the type of wealth that's involved with some of these fraternities and shit. This one of them speaking on was in the South. So I learned something else about fraternities. I believe a fraternity, especially in the United States, is a white man's first foray into extreme racism. I believe that. I believe that. I believe that. I believe that. I believe that because some of these fraternities, especially the ones in the South, was founded on plantations, and their leaders were slave owners and races. The College of Charleston, one of their extreme gentlemen for this fraternity called Kappa Omega, I believe that's the name. One of their great leaders or people that they look up to is Robert E. Lee, the general from the Civil War and shit. They have practices. They dress, when the pledgees are pledging, they have to dress a certain way. It's very secretive. They essentially become slaves for the guys that's higher up. Why someone would do this to themselves was beyond me until I read the book. A person who joins a fraternity, especially a white guy in the United States, that's a power play. That's an extreme power play. Imagine being in a gang, whereas in the streets, you got street gangs. Imagine your gang in the streets being a bunch of violent, dumb motherfuckers and shit like that. Whereas in a fraternity, the guys in the fraternity gang with you, these motherfuckers all gonna have good grades, great credit. You feel me? Good grades, great credit, resources. And all of this will only appreciate as the pledgee goes through college and shit like that. Like, they have fraternities are a worldwide gang. There was some stats quoted in the book how 80% of judges, law enforcement, former presidents, just anybody in a high position, especially in the United States, it's a good chance that they probably was in a fraternity. Straight up. Fraternities, the United States, from what I'm reading, is kind of like built off fraternities and shit. These fraternities, like most things, if you put a bunch of guys in a room together, there's testosterone and there's going to be some bullshit. You know what I'm saying? You can expect that. You can expect that. So what you have is, and something that I encountered for myself in college, is on college campuses, a lot of fraternities, they bout their money, and they often are involved in drugs. I seen this firsthand when I went to Slippery Rock University in 2001. I went to Slippery Rock with intentions of leaving my neighborhood where I was a drug dealer at. I had just got out of prison, and I didn't want to go back home to sell drugs and shit. So I said, man, I'm going to go ahead, try to get back in college, go back to playing basketball and shit. When I got to college, after being there a very, very short time, I was exposed to the drug scene. The drug scene in colleges in America is very, very extreme, to the point that you will have students. They're not even students. You'll have people living on campus for years at a time just to sell drugs. This is something that I wasn't prepared to encounter when I went to college, but I ended up in college, and I'm smoking weed when I get there. So, you know, after I done ran out of the weed with the weed at, the weed, you know how weed is. It's a culture, and you meet people, and you around strangers and shit. Make a long story short, we got tired of smoking, whatever we had in the dorms. I said to myself, I ain't gonna be down here smoking up all that. I can't afford to smoke all this weed, so I need to be down here hustling. Boom, go home, get a quarter pound, come back, flip that. It's gone. To prevent myself from running up and down the highway getting more weed, I'm trying to find somewhere to cop on campus because it was weed there. Like, you know what I'm saying? After doing some light investigations and shit, I was taken directly to the fraternity guys. I was taken to a frat house. The night that I went there, it was a party there. It was bitches everywhere. This probably was the only way that somebody like me could get into this frat house, because I was black, and these white guys whose frat house it was, but they allowed black bitches in there and shit. It was girls in there of all colors and shit, but I didn't see a lot of guys like me. I seen a few, and if it was a few in there, they was athletes and shit. Like, I'm in there, and I'm noticing who's in power on on the college campus I was at. It was right there laid in front of me. I was taken to them to cop. When I went to go get some weed from these guys, I was exposed to the fact that was just something small. They got weed, they got ecstasy, they got cocaine, they got all of that shit. I couldn't believe that this was on a college campus, right? And when you have fraternities and you have a lot of people with a lot of money, you know what I'm saying? It's 10 guys living in a house. They have these parties. The party thing is a very big thing on college campuses, especially with the fraternities. People even choose fraternities based on how loud their parties is and shit like that. So, yeah, you have these live ass, wild ass parties, man, where it's liquor, weed, drugs everywhere, right? And you learn that these fraternities and shit, they got 10 motherfuckers in the house. 8 of them rich. You feel me? So when they have a party, whereas a black party might have just had an ounce of weed, 2 ounces of weed, they might have a whole fucking pound in their party and shit. A whole pound of weed. Whereas a regular party might have just had a few lines on the table. They might have a whole ounce of cocaine to sniff on the fucking table and shit. So reading this shit about these guys, man, they start talking about an event that attracted a lot of people to this fraternity called Mountain Week. Mountain Week was basically a retreat. It wasn't in the mountains, it was in the woods, where a bunch of rich ass white boys who in the fraternity at the College of Charleston go back in the woods and party like a motherfucker. All the cocaine, PCP, all of that, everything that you could imagine, they have in these woods, and they back in the woods, and they have orgies, they fucking all crazy, and it's Animal House, and this attracts people to them, and I'm reading this shit, and I'm like, damn, you know what I'm saying? It made me think about how wild white girls are and shit. They used to have a TV show called Girls Gone Wild many years ago, and you would see the white girls lifting up their, you know, they t-shirts showing their titties and all of that shit. And if you ever had sex with a white girl, you know that's a whole different experience and shit than fucking anybody else. Like, they on a whole nother level and shit. And just from reading the shit that went down at Mountain Week, I understood. But anyway, Mountain Week, they were in the woods. They rented some cabins in the woods. They burnt everything that they could find. They took furniture out of the cabins, put them in a bonfire, torch shit. When the police come and show up, this is why fraternities get out of hand. When police come to show up, the police know their place. The police come to show up and try to regulate this wild party in the woods. You seeing all of these expensive ass cars and shit like that. The police officer automatically know he's out of his league. You feel me? I got to handle these kids a little different. So he telling them, you know, what's going on here, da-da-da-da-da. And they give him some type of punk ass excuse, and he get on in the wind. Why? Because like I said earlier in this telecast, law enforcement, judges, attorneys, they all fraternities. They all fraternity members. The world is controlled. I believe the world, especially the United States, is 100% controlled by fraternities. But anyway, let me skip a little bit. This book that I'm reading, these white boys ended up getting a RICO case on campus and shit. These motherfuckers was getting money like a motherfucker, selling the the perks and the pharmaceutical drugs. You know, that's bad now. The Percocets, the Vikes, and the fentanyl. They ran through all of that shit. And when they got indicted, people looked at who they were and what type of people they were, and they couldn't believe it. They couldn't believe that this thing that they were a part of turned criminal, when in all reality, a lot of fraternities are criminal. They are. A lot of fraternities are criminal. And I believe now that marijuana has become illegal everywhere, it don't make sense for a fraternity not to be pumping weed on campus. So you got these wild ass organizations, right, being built on campus. Just from reading this book, I can understand a lot more about them. I understand y'all now. Chiz, I got homies that they've been in fraternities and shit, but I understand y'all a lot more now. And I also understand why we had to whoop y'all ass. A lot of fraternities, they stay in conflict. They do. They stay in some shit. They stay in some shit because, number one, to be a part of some of them fraternities, you got to work out. Like, they building great men. That's why when you go to the gym, you'll see 2-3 white boys lifting together and shit like that. This is this fraternity life and shit, right? You got dudes lifting weights. You got dudes who got a lot of money and resources. Their grade point averages are high because this is one of the requirements to be a part of these organizations. They're taught etiquette. They're taught about history. It's a huge educational part. Before they accept you, that you got to go through some education and shit. And just from reading that shit in that book, I could imagine programming one guy with this type of doctrine and then programming 50 of them. And what you doing is you building basically an army. You breathing this shit into these niggas. That's why when we was in college, for those who have been in college before, them niggas used to be in the fucking the fucking parties and shit. Party walking. Coming through like they animals and shit, like they gorillas and shit. You know why? They felt they was the livest motherfuckers there. You know why? Because they educated. They in the gym. You feel me? And they got their chips up. So they looking down at everybody in the building. That's why we've often had to kick them niggas' ass. For those of you who are a part of fraternities, I ain't got nothing against y'all. I'm just giving a little insight on the history of the thing and how shocked I am about the depth that this shit can come to. But fights with fraternities is something that happens often on college campuses because they feel like they call themselves the alpha. What's stronger than the alpha? What's larger than the alpha and shit? You feel me? Like they have this programmed into their mind and they're on the campus and shit. They feel like they run things. You know what I mean? You got other people living in dorms. They living in a house. You know what I'm saying? You might have other people who still leaning on their parents, whereas they not even going to accept you into the fraternity if you're not on, you know what I mean? If you're not well off and shit. This is something that's, it's part of the criteria. You have to be fucking well off to be down. With the high level ones, like I said, they have different fraternities for different social statuses and shit like that. But yeah, a lot of history, a lot of education is required, and there's strength in numbers. There's strength in numbers. And one of the hazing rituals that's in this book was they would have some of their pledgees walk around with a pair of Wrangler jeans on, a sweatshirt turned inside out, and a pair of Timberlands that's all dicked. You know what I'm saying? And have them wearing that shit around campus. They said they had them wearing that shit around campus like that because after they passed through this ritual, that's the last time that they will ever have to dress like a laborer. You feel me? That's the last time in life they will ever have to dress like a laborer. This is what they're saying. If you can go through all of this ritualistic shit, the world will be handed to you. You know why? Because your future employer, he might be a part of a fraternity. You know what I'm saying? Your boss might be a part of a fraternity. Everywhere that you turn in life, your loan officer, like, this is how powerful this shit is. You trying to buy a house or something? Put on that motherfucker that you Alpha Kappa Alpha. You know what I'm saying? Or you, whatever fraternity, put that on there. This is almost like a pass. When they see that, they see prestige and shit. They see prestige, probably revenue. I'm pretty sure people that sell houses and insurance and shit like that, they probably aware of the financial status of different fraternities and shit. I read that the higher caliber the fraternity, of course, naturally the worse the hazing and shit. You know what I'm saying? Because after you go through this shit, your life gonna be pretty much set. But the ones that are popular, world renowned, got chapters all over the United States at every university. Those are the ones that are the most dangerous. You got to think about it. They're not just letting anybody. I just described it to you as paradise. They call it crossing over and shit. Once you cross over, the world is laid out to you and shit. You might go to interview for a job and, you know what I'm saying, your supervisor, he's in a fraternity. Like, it's a mob. It's a mob. Fraternities are the biggest gang in the United States. Straight up. The things that they do and the shit that's going on now, they organizations, they operating like drug cartels and shit. If you go to a university and you see a frat house, they more than likely probably pumping something up out of that motherfucker and shit. This is just what it is. It made me think, like, when you think about people who have been in fraternities and shit, you know, you see them on, let's say I'm looking at the presidential election and shit, you see somebody like Biden or whatever. You see them guys, they got their ties on, and in the public's eye, they might feel that this is an ethical person. The people who go through fraternity shit, who go through everything they have to do to become a part of a fraternity, it just makes you look at them like, damn, he did that. You feel me? Because by the time they're into their public office, or by the time they're off into their career, establishing their career, you only look at them as that. You feel me? You don't look at them as, yo, this dude just had a kid in the closet, made him drink 20 shots of Fireball and shit like that. Like, this is it's a whole lot of dangerous shit that goes on in this world. And whereas I noticed that the book is called Among the Bros. I got a homie named Chiz. He's Omega Psi Phi. That's the Qs. That's one of the most popular black fraternities anywhere. They refer to themselves as the Bruhs and shit like that. I seen this video where it was a bunch of them somewhere and they all had towels on and shit like that. I believe that video is probably guys trying to pledge to become a part of the organization. There's a lot of shit that they require these people to do, man, before they accept them. One of the most gruesome, two of the most gruesome things I heard was a guy had to lay down with his elbows on bottle caps until his arms started to bleed. Another guy, they put him in a room. The room was covered. They put tarps all over the floor because they knew that these guys would probably throw up. They had them laid down side by side. They cracked the egg in one of their mouth and had them go next to each other, spitting the egg in each other's mouth until it went all the way to the end of the fucking room. After all of this is done, just the shit that I'm describing to you is criminal. But imagine the types of people who are created once they've crossed over, once they don't have to do this. The next people who come into this organization, it ain't gonna be easy. They're not gonna treat them right. You feel me? And it's just something that I wanted to get in here and discuss, because you don't think that these people was like this. You don't think that these people was like this, man. They have fraternities. They have parties all the time. They have getaways all the time when it's just them. And they make their money work for them. I'm pretty sure they have investment groups. It's like having a bunch of fucking brothers, a bunch of people who share the same interests as you. That's basically what it is. People who share the same interests as you, and have the same itinerary as you, crossing over into it can be dangerous though. It can be dangerous though, especially in this day and age, because now, I just told you, they try to do hazing rituals that don't leave no marks on your body or don't leave any physical damage and shit. So that's why they got them drinking all this goddamn liquor. And it kills, probably kills a student every year in America, or multiple students every year in America. But this is the requirements to get in to the world's biggest gang. I've never thought these guys can turn evil like that, because a lot of these high caliber fraternities, like I told you, they only accept people from very successful walks of life. You feel me? So these dudes come from cul-de-sac living and shit like that, and by the time they get to the campus and by the time they put them through this process, they monsters. They monsters. They monsters. And that's how you end up losing a student every year, because of these hazing rituals. Is it worth it? I think so. I think a lot of people who look like me weren't privy to the information. We weren't taught, or we didn't understand exactly what joining a frat was. We didn't understand what that was. Nobody told us, yo, this right here, you'll be set for life, or you have an edge on everybody for life. It's a fraternity is no different than the Masons. It's no different than the Masons. These organizations, you see on the news that America got a gang problem and shit like that, and they talk about, the Crips and the Bloods and shit like that. These niggas got nothing. Crips, the black gangs got nothing. They don't pool their money together. They don't have no political power. None of that shit. But the fraternities, they have all of that. They stick together in terms of financial investments and shit like that. It's just so much easier, man, when you got a team. And I didn't think that shit would improve me as a person, but I would have been a cold gat in that world. I was just so dynamic on my own that I never felt a need to become a part of that. So I didn't, but guys who did, like I said, I got an uncle who was a part of a frat. I understand now. And the things that I've learned, it's no different than the Masons. That's what it is. As a matter of fact, some of the organizations, not all of them are referred to as fraternities. Some of them are referred to as orders. You know what I'm saying? And lastly, I want to share this piece of information before I get out. The term blackballing, that comes from the fraternity world, where they use white marbles and a black marble as a voting process and shit. You know what I'm saying? And if a black marble knocked the white marble out of the way or out of position, they call it being blackballed. So that's where the phrase blackball came from. It came from the fraternities. I'm going to go further into this discussion as I read more of this book, and I want you guys to follow me. If there's anybody who is a part of a fraternity and you watching this, leave something in the comments, man. I'm on your ass and shit, man. I'm looking at you guys differently. And that's all I have for now, Nick. One more thing. D1 from New Orleans and Rick Ross, whose book I also bought. We ride with D1. We tired of the deaf music. I'm a fan of Meek Mill. I'm a fan of Rick Ross. I'm not a fan of the music they put out. Everything that D1 said was correct. You can't be the face of prison reform and turn around and be talking about killing people. That just don't add up. So let's get past the killing. I don't co-sign it. It's something that needs to be over with. The telling needs to be over with. The drug dealing needs to be over with. They just let Rollo home yesterday. The video on my page of him telling is going crazy. Make sure y'all tune into that. Follow me on Twitter at GullyTV1. Visit the website. Make sure you go through there and get you some knittage. TheRealDribble.com. I can't stress that enough. The website, TheRealDribble.com. Slide through there. Truck drivers, man, if you feeling me, man, like, share, comment, man. And I'll see y'all on the other side. Nick, I appreciate you. I'm about to get to the gym. I'm up out of here. Peace.
See, they just turn the enemies. Homies gone, all we got is memories. I'm selective where I get my energy. Smiling on the outside, on the inside, shit be killing me. Knowing that the love fake, that's why I keep it still with me. Riding with the ceiling crack, boy, I did it big, no gorilla black. I'm still in the trenches.